Hello. So this is my first video that I've done so far, so we're going to see how this goes. But Steven Universe is just one of those shows that just changes you. Seeing how Steven grew up and over trauma is just seriously heart-touching. There's mysteries and drama and songs, and oh my gosh, the songs are really, really good. And essentially that is what we're here for, the drama and trauma. So this is a series that I've wanted to do for a hot minute. It is inspired by Overanalyzing My Little Pony, and he was inspired by Overanalyzing Avatar, which I have not seen yet, but I am planning on it because it's such a good series too. But every single one of these shows is just so my favorite so much, so I thought I would try and give it a shot. We're gonna see how this goes. With my tech skills and stuff, I guess I'll be trying to dive into the characters, the scenes, and the songs. I'll also dive into their clothing at some point in time, as that definitely shows their character as well. And I'll try and upload a video just about the intro in a couple of days or so. Don't miss that. The first episode is gonna be quite long due to me talking so much, because I'll talk about it later. Intros are just very important. Also, if I miss anything, definitely tell me in the comments, although I doubt anybody is gonna watch this. I am going to try to talk as much as I can. I'm also going to try to add everything I know about the series and what I know everyone else has talked about. So I'm just going to try to compile everything into just one little series so that people can reflect back on it. This is entirely for fun. Subscribe if you want. I really don't care. This is mainly for me though, just because it's fun and I want to talk about it. On to the beef of the episode. Sorry for the intro. Okay, so for the beef, I'm going to talk about the titles of each episode a little bit too. I don't pay attention to them too much. Whenever you're watching the show, you really just move on from one episode to the next, so you don't really care about the titles, but I'm going to talk about that. Gem Glow for the first episode is not much of a start. It's just explaining what happens. Yeah, Steven's gem glows in this episode for the first time, so I guess there's that. So I'm going to dive into the intros of each character because they're seriously important, and both of the Overanalyzing channels went through that as well, so I completely agree with them. Intros are very, very important into knowing what the character is about. So I'm going to go into the actual intro in another episode. So in our first shot of Steven Universe, it's this overhead shot of the big donut, which is very important to a part of the city in most of the series. This is where Steven hangs out with his friends, I guess. A lot of the episodes actually have places here in the Big Donut other than Steven's house, so it's pretty important. The next thing that happens is Steven crying. He's a child. Steven is crying no and saying that this has to be a dream, which just immediately shows his childish and overdramatic nature. This is his intro. You make the intro who the character is, and this just shows exactly how childish he is. He's very upset and concerned, and he goes to run to Lars and immediately hugs him around the legs. Then we see Lars and Sadie in this scene, and that is their first shot, and I think they are both some really good characters to the series. They both have incredibly interesting arcs. Lars's first lines are, "Get off of me," which is perfect because he just hates Steven. But he sort of does care about Steven at the end of the day, but he more so cares about himself, which definitely comes in with the cool kids later, and we'll definitely get into that. Sadie's first lines are, "I'm sorry, Steven, I guess they stopped making them." It doesn't show us much into her character, but hopefully her intro gets better, but as I look through the rest of this episode, nothing really happens with her. This is the only time she's seen, so hopefully in another episode we get more of that. Then we learn from Steven that his favorite ice cream bar brand stopped supplies, which is reasonable. I would be really upset too, but I know that I've heard from a lot of other channels that the Cookie Cat story he tells is almost so essential to the story, which, yeah, it definitely is. I'm not going to go too much into depth because I know so many other people have done it, so I'm just going to say what other people have done, but not in that much depth. I'm going to say it in my own words anyway. The screen then pans over to Cookie Cat's competition, the Lion Lickers, which is comes in. I'm not quite sure what the animators are trying to show here with this nod, but I guess it's pretty cool to look back on. I don't know. I don't know what they're trying to explain here, but it's funny. Lars then tells Steven that he should make some ice cream with his magic belly button, which is just Lars being a massive jerk again. I hate Lars in the beginning. I feel like everyone does. We'll see if I change my mind after I do this, but this is also the first time we ever see Steven's gem, and Steven has a pink gem, which is really interesting going on the colors, because colors can actually show who a person is, and in this series, colors definitely do that. It's weird to see, because boy is blue, girl is pink, so it's a little strange to see that this boy's gem is pink. I don't really know what that means, but hopefully someone else knows. It's just weird. Steven then kisses the freezer, which is like, what? And then Sadie just tells him to take the freezer, and she is not paid enough for this. We don't actually hear anyone say Sadie's name in that entire scene though, so we still don't know who she is at all. This first episode did her no justice. So I guess that was the intro to the intro, and now we actually get into the beef of the story. So Steven then takes the freezer home, and we can see that he lives on the beach just outside of the town below a large cliff, and there is a statue of a woman, and I really didn't notice this until someone called it out, but it's which is literally such a great touch. Like, she doesn't show up until the last episode. This one detail just shows that the creators had almost everything planned from the start, which is just absolutely fantastic. Rebecca Sugar, which is the creator of the show, had also been stating that none of the episodes are fillers, which I wholeheartedly believe with evidence, so that is going to come into. Steven then opens the door trying to find the crystal gems and immediately gets attacked by what is this? What is going on? It's a centibeetle, I think, is what they end up calling it. I don't remember what Steven ends up naming it, but he doesn't name it in this episode, but it's later on. These come back. This thing just jumps at Steven, which is actually crazy, knowing that his guardians would let this happen to him. They are horrible parents, and we will see more of that. We then see Amethyst with her whip, and I'm also going to talk about gem placement a bit and each of their weapons. There's so much symbolism in this series. It really is a good series, which is why I'm doing this. Amethyst's first line is "Sup, Steven," which isn't much, but it really does show that she's cool with him and they're close, which is, it checks out. That is their relationship. We then see Pearl spinning her sword thing. It's a spear, I think, and she attacks 3 of these things. Her moves show her agility, and from a lot we can see that Pearl is definitely based on ballet, and we'll get into that later. Garnet then breaks one of their backs. This shows her brute strength, which is also her seriously big attribute, and then she freaking tears it in half. Oh my gosh. Thank goodness this is not a detailed show. There would be so much blood. It then poofs, and that is the first time we ever see something poof, and they never explain it in this episode. It's just like, there's so many more questions than answers in this episode. It gets insane. Steven then calls them awesome, and he's just a cute little kid. He has no idea what's going on. Pearl's first line is, "Sorry, Steven, we'll get these centibeetles out of your room," which is like, okay, tells me nothing about her character. And I was right about the name. They're called centibeetles, so let's go. I'm smart. And then the beetle then spits acid and tears a hole in the freaking ground. We'll see this house gets torn down and beat up a lot, and everything just goes back to normal, which is a little bit interesting because I know in the amazing world of Gumball, you know, people get hurt very often and they just end up being fine in the next episode, and that would be completely fine if there was no continuity, but in Steven Universe you need continuity, and I'll get into this later, but there are things that break and then they just come up in the next episode and they're completely fine, and that would be fine if Steven Universe didn't have continuity, but the whole show is about continuity, so it's just, it just gets a little crazy. Amethyst. Oh my god, Amethyst. Gross. She says that they don't have gems, and I thought that later on that we learn it's like their eyes. Oh, it's literally the next line. Garnet's first line is, "That must mean there must be a mother nearby." That also gave me nothing about her character, again. And then Pearl says they need to get rid of them. obviously, Pearl, thanks for stating the obvious, freaking Pearl. Steven then really wants to come with them, and him saying that just shows that he's very funny, and also, I'm leaving quite a bit of jokes out of this, but you just have to watch the series to understand it. It is really it's a funny series. It's really, really good. Pearl then tells him no, and that he needs to control his gem powers first. He's 6. No, he's not. How old is he? He's 12. That is not a 12-year-old boy. He looks 6. In the movie, he's 16. In 4 years, he grows 3 feet. Okay. It's also weird that Steven's dad doesn't show up for a couple of episodes, and I guess we'll get into that episode later, but I feel like he's a huge part of Steven's life, so it's just weird that he's not in the first episode. And one of the beetles get into the fridge, and Steven yells at it. Garnet then destroys it, and Steven notices the cookie cats in their freezer. His eyes are just so cute here. He's just a little guy. He's just a little guy. The crystal gems then tell Steven that they got it for him, which is honestly one of the nicest things they ever do for Steven. Why don't they do this more often? Why don't they do this more often? The gems then sort of argue whose idea it was, and you can't sort of tell, but it was, I think at the end of the day, it was Garnet's. Steven then immediately sings the Cookie Cat theme song. I don't know if I'll go into too much depth, but I'll just say it here. There's dogs barking. I'm gonna say it instead of sing it. Oh, he's a frozen treat with an all-new taste because he came to this planet from outer space. I can't do it. Oh, he's a frozen treat with an all-new taste because he came to this planet from outer space. A refugee of an interstellar war. But now he's at your local grocery store. Cookie Cat, he's a pet for your tummy. Cookie Cat, he's super duper yummy. Cookie Cat, he left his family behind. Cookie Cat, now available at Gherkins off Route 109. So, let me get into that now. Old fans will definitely know that this is the story of I also wanted to see the location that Steven sings about, and I found a couple Route 109s. One of them is in Uruguay, one of them is in California, and one is in New Jersey. And we definitely can assume that he's talking about New Jersey here, as we can see from a map later on in the episodes that he lives around this area. They also talk later on about leaving to go Empire City, which is most likely referring to the Empire State Building in New York or around that area. We also know that this time period of the series is closely in the future. I don't know how far into the future, but we can see it by multiple pieces of evidence. And I think I'm also going to create a map to all the different places that the gems visit on Earth. But they already do have maps to do that kind of stuff. I guess I'm just going to get a little bit more specific. I didn't find anything about Gherkins, but I did find something called Jergens, and they have a product called Natural Glow Moisturizer. I guess that was interesting. This is definitely not anything like Gem Glow and Natural. That's not anything. That's me making something up. We can also assume that Steven and the gems live near or around or in something similar to the city of Cape May, New Jersey. This may or may not come in later, but Cape May, New Jersey, that's canon for me. That's where they live. The gems then laugh at Steven's little song. They love him so much right now. That's so cute. I wish this happened more often. Steven then eats the ice cream sandwich and his gem starts to glow. Amethyst tells him to summon his weapon and Steven freaks out. Goofy face. Steven's gem glow leaves and he asks if they can explain how to summon a weapon. And of course, each of them go separately, but Pearl says she'll go first. The way she says that she'll go first, she interrupts Garnet, which is rude. Pearl, you freaking suck. Pearl can be quite prideful a lot, which is interesting based on her past, as she is supposed to be submissive and not outgoing. She's very good at sword fighting. Yeah, she can be prideful about that, but it's just weird that she's being prideful about how she brings out her weapon. I guess it's a weird thing to add because it doesn't add to her character. This is not who she is, essentially. She's not a prideful person, but this is definitely addressed later on, but I think I could definitely relate to her as I am quite prideful as well. Maybe that's why I hate her. Anyway, hopefully I can learn from her arc. But then we move on to the next scene, and it's Pearl talking to Steven, and she takes him to a beautiful tree, and gosh, this scene is gorgeous. She tells him to pay attention to the petals, and Pearl's lessons are honestly really good. She is the oldest gem, so it would make sense for her to be the wisest. She talks about the leaves falling like a dance, which is definitely her character. She says it seems improvised, but it's calculated in real times based on the properties of the planet. This is a really good quote from Pearl because it just shows definitely who she is. That is her. She calculates her every move. She then takes out her spear, which this would probably be a good time to talk about her weapon. I won't go much into detail just because I know that others have done it, and this is actually based on, I don't know, someone has done it. I'll put it in the description. It's this guy. Pearl is sharp and strong, and she is very precise and organized, and a spear as her weapon is just perfect into it. That's all I can say. That's pretty much her. A sword is her. She's a sword. Her nose looks like a sword. It's really pretty though. I love her weapon. It's gorgeous. And that's the end of the scene. We then go to Amethyst, and she tells him the exact opposite of what Pearl says, which is fantastic. Great, that's definitely what he needs, Amethyst. She tells him that practicing is no fun. She then eats a donut, which is a big part of her character. Gems don't really need to eat, but she wants to, and later on she says it feels weird. I do have a theory as to why she does this. Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think anyone else has talked about this, but she is the only crystal gem that has only lived on Earth. She is surrounded by humans, so it would make sense that she would take after the people. She's also very childish, and showing her eating all the time sort of reminds me of a toddler in a way. She also reminds me if RDJ, if you guys know, he'd constantly be eating on Marvel, and they just gave up trying to stop him at one point, which is hilarious. Amethyst then says when she needs to summon her weapon, it just happens. Her weapon is a whip, which is quite interesting for who her character is. During the first season, she has a few emotional outbursts, and that could be similar to a whip in a way. She doesn't think about it, which is the exact opposite of Pearl, which we see in a near episode. They don't get along because of this. Amethyst is very much outgoing and just, I guess you could say, go with the flow sort of girl, but she really just doesn't care and does whatever she wants. She's like a teenager. She's a toddler. She's a gem toddler. And then Pearl is just, I guess you could say she's a motherly figure, but I don't feel like she's that much of a mother. She's really like a mentor instead of a mother. But they just go off at it together. From what my research, a whip could symbolize a sense of control or maybe a lack of it in Amethyst's case. She never really wanted the life that was given to her, and that is her entire arc. So I guess a whip is suiting enough fit for her. I didn't like her whip when I first saw the show. I don't think it tells much into her character, but I think knowing that with a sense of control, I think it makes more sense to her. We then move on to the next scene, and this is Steven with Garnet, and Steven tells her he's very confused about their contradictory statements of Pearl and Amethyst. So he says, so I'm supposed to work really hard and not try it all at the same time. Garnet just tells him yes. Everyone who knows me will tell you that I loathe even contradictory statements. I hate them so much. So Garnet just tells him yes, or he could channel the energy of all living things and channeling the power through his gem and create a weapon out of that. Thanks, Garnet. We appreciate it. He's 12 years old. Garnet's weapon is her gauntlets, and we know some pretty infamous gauntlets. This guy. What do they have in common? Raw power and leadership. It is no wonder that she has these. They are absolutely perfect for her. Garnet doesn't get as much time as the others. I feel like her weapon is very obvious. We then move on to the next scene, and Steven wants to recreate what happens the last time, and he wants to do it to a T, which we don't see him do at all after this. Steven is definitely more of a go-with-the-flow kind of guy, so it's weird to see him put so much effort into making this perfect. Goofy face. It doesn't work, obviously, and he calls himself really not a crystal gem. No! The baby! He's self-deprecating at 12. Please help him. Pearl reassures him, and Amethyst tells him he's fun to be around even if his gem is useless. Thank you, Amethyst. We appreciate it. She then takes it back and says they aren't the crystal gems without him, which would be a really sweet sentiment if she actually meant it, because she definitely did not mean it. They are all horrible guardians to this kid. Steven then takes another bite of the sandwich, and his gem glows, feeling a little bit better, and his weapon forms, and it is a shield. Why are they surprised? They really shouldn't be surprised. Why is Pearl surprised? Steven then gets excited, and his shield bounces all over and hits his TV, and this TV just gets beaten up over and over again. As you'll see, the continuity. Steven then makes the conclusion that when he eats ice cream, he can summon his shield. Oh, Steven, you are so wrong. The gems don't even correct him in this instance. They just go with it, and we, the audience, know that Steven can summon his weapons through his emotions. Why did the gems not even bring that up at all? Steven's weapon is a shield, which is a defensive weapon, which is definitely exactly who he is. He has to defend his world from evil gems, defend the universe, and I could go on and on. There are just so many times where he protects people, but he also has to protect and defend himself, which is extremely sad because he doesn't do this in Steven Universe Future. But just like the other crystal gems, they fight and defend for who and what they are. In conclusion, the shield is awesome, perfect. That's character. Going back to the episode, outside something starts rumbling, and we can see from the window that it is a giant centibeetle, the mother of the horde. Then we leave on to the next scene, which is them going outside. The gems then go to fight, and Steven really wants to help too, and this poor sweet kid. The gems hide behind this giant hand away from the acid. I'm not quite sure what this hand goes to. If anyone knows, please remind me. I might have just completely forgotten. It shows up in quite a few episodes too. It gets destroyed by the acid, as we can see here, but it shows up later completely intact. I don't know, maybe it's just continuity again. In other series, psoriasis, it would be fine. But in this series, it's not okay. Steven then takes a bunch of cookie cats and starts stuffing his face, trying to summon his weapon, and this is just, oh my word. The mother beetle then breaks the freezer, and Steven is upset, and he uses the broken freezer as a weapon to electrocute the beetle. What in the world? This boy, ruthless monster.
I'm a monster!
The gems then gang up and poof it, and that's a dang Pokeball, my guy. Garnet then bubbles the gem, and Steven freaking buries the wrapper. What the heck? And only now do the gems tell Steven his powers don't come from the ice cream, and the episode ends with Steven puking because he ate too many cookie cats. That is the end of the first episode, and overall, I think this episode was pretty good to introduce us to the world of Steven Universe. At the end of each episode, I'll talk about what Steven or what we have learned from it. So in this episode, it really highlights Steven's inexperience with his powers, but it really helps us understand his growth over the series to know where he came from. This episode also showed us that he's very different from the gems, but he's also different from the humans. We really don't know who he is at this point, and neither does he. He is just a little kid, and we don't know what the gems are either. So once again, we don't have a lot of answers. We have more questions, which just makes you want to come back for more, which honestly is a great episode. You want to come back. So yeah, great episode.